Hey everybody, this is a really helpful discussion that Liz and I are having about money philosophy. And so everybody has a philosophy about money. When you come into marriage, you have to be able to develop a congruent thought process about how you're going to handle finances. So this is going to really throw some things out there that are going to help you with your spouse and managing money and developing a right philosophy. So enjoy as you listen. But when you're done with this podcast, go and jump on your podcast platform. Do two things. One, give us a 5-star rating. And then the other thing is write us a glowing review. Every person that writes a review and gives us a 5-star rating helps this podcast get pushed up in the number as far as when people will see it. When they search for something like family or marriage, this becomes more available to them. So we're trying to get this word out. This is a great resource. We've had so many people that have been so blessed. So help us out. Give us a 5-star rating and then also go on and give us a review. Be blessed as you listen. So this is real. This is really real.
Very real.
Let's be real. Money is one of the most problematic things in the home and in people's marriages.
Correct.
And it's the reason is that everybody has to have it to live. Everybody has to have it to to do what they do in life. And there is philosophy that's built around money.
That's right.
That people have either unintentional or just kind of how they landed in life because of how they grew up, schooling they had, whatever, to where they have a particular, and a philosophy is just a way of thinking. It's like a pattern of thinking. It's
That's
how
right.
you approach particular things. And so everybody has a philosophy about money. And you can have people that have, they're greedy. That's a philosophy about money. You have people that don't care anything about money. That's a philosophy about money. You have people that believe that, we should be blessed. And you have people that think that, you're evil if you have money. I mean, there's all of these different ideas. And then you get into either even some things about like stewardship and different things like that, where people have got wildly different perspectives. So then you get two people that come into a marriage, and you could have two people that grew up in a wealthy home, and they still could have different philosophies.
Correct.
You could have
Yeah.
two people that grew up in a more poor home, a less well-to-do home, still have different philosophies. But especially when you have people that have come from money and come from no money, they really develop or have some different ways of thinking. And so they have to develop a way of thinking in their marriage that is congruent with the other person. And really that's where you allow the Lord to come in and begin to teach you, read books together, go to seminars together, take classes together. There's all kinds of things you can do to help you begin to develop the same kind of ideas about money, surrounding money, to where I think there's a lot of philosophies you can have. There's definitely a biblical philosophy about money that's healthy, but it's really unhealthy, no matter your philosophy, to think very, very different from your spouse, because you can't be on the same page. You can't be unified unless you think the same about it.
That's right. And this is where divisive, like money can be divisive in your marriage. And it is the thing, like you said, if you are not unified, if you're not intentionally talking about it, not yelling, not fighting, but having healthy conversation of this is why I think this way and why do you think this way? Like really sitting down and saying, we need to mine out why we think the way that we think about this, that you're seeking to understand how or where your spouse is coming from, because you can't just tell them to change. That won't work, because it is philosophies are embedded in us, and until we personally understand why it is we think the way that we think, we can never change that.
And so a lot of the ways that we think get revealed by our behavior with money. And so you take somebody, like there's certain, and some people are just wired different. Like, so we have a pretty standard idea about money in our home, standard for us anyways, right? But then we have kids that we have one that doesn't like to spend. Think of two in particular, the two middle ones. One, he's looking for a loan to spend money that he doesn't have, and the other one is more of the one that would have money to loan because he doesn't like to spend a lot of money.
Right.
So that can be different just based on personalities. It's not always about environment, but when you take personalities and environment combined, and then two people come into a marriage, they're going to be different on how they view money, and so come into a place of, I don't want to say compromise. That could be a word, because we've had to compromise some on maybe how we view things, but mostly just come into a place to where you're like, yes, this is right, and this is how we need to move forward. Clarity on it.
Yeah,
so the way that people behave with money determines really how they think. So if you're the kind of person that you just go, you get money and you spend, there's nothing wrong with spending money. That's why we get money. Part of why we get money is to spend it. It really is to build wealth, but we have to spend money to live, and so that's part of it. And so, but then some people, they will just spend very frivolously. And then the other end of that perspective is that you can have somebody that they don't want to spend money on anything, and they are just a cheapskate. And if you have two people that are married like that, that can cause a lot of problems. And so if you want to know how you think about money, just look at your behavior. Your behavior around money will tell you. And so you can have, I know many couples. In ministry over the years, I've met countless couples that he wanted to tithe, but she didn't. Well, although it usually is the other way around. She wants to tithe and he doesn't.
Right.
And so she's like, I want to give, I want to bless, I want to help people. And then he's over here being Mr. Stingy Pants and doesn't want to release anything. And that's a problem on a lot of levels. But the biggest deal is they're not on the same page with money.
Right.
So we have to develop a philosophy about money that is the same. We have to develop the same belief system about money, to where when I go and spend money on something, you're okay with it.
That's right.
And when you say we need to save money here, then I'm okay with it, and vice versa. However that works in the marriage, we have to be okay with it, because money is a huge source of contention in marriage, and so it's such a source of contention that oftentimes people they won't even have the same bank accounts. And I've met many people, and if different people have different ways of handling their finances. And so you might have some logistical reasons why you're like, no, she has her account and I have mine. But most of the time, people don't have the same bank accounts because they think differently about money.
That's
and
right.
instead of attacking that conflict, that problem there, and coming to a resolution, they just say, well, the easiest thing is that you get this much money every week and I get this much money every week, and you do whatever you want and I'm going to do whatever I want. Mm-hmm. And that's terrible. You can't, that's poor stewardship in your marriage, and God can't bless that. That doesn't work well. And I've met many people. As a matter of fact, my grandparents, they and they're gone now, but they had their own separate bank accounts. And he was not one to spend a lot, and she was one to spend. She had wall-to-wall furniture all the time, and so she was always spending money. And so it might have saved their household from and they were able to pay bills and stuff because they did that. But she shouldn't have been so prideful with their money and listened to him and figured out how to save some money, right? So we have to come to a place of conciseness. So let me ask you this question, because I feel like you're one of the most bendable people. Like you have a great listening ear and are always willing to speak truth, but then compromise. And compromise isn't a dirty word. It doesn't mean you're living in sin. Sometimes it just means that you're meeting in the middle on the way that you think about things. Sure. So what are some things you think that people could do? Like if you have people that are not on the same page about finances, what are some things they could do to begin to work to get on the same page with finances?
That is a great question. I think it starts with you. You can't even begin the conversation with somebody else if you don't know why it is that you think the way that you do. Even about how you think that your spouse thinks about their money or money in general. Do you believe money is a tool? Do you believe money is a source? Do you believe that you have to have all these things because it's fulfilling a need on the inside of you? Do you have entitlement around money? I worked, therefore I deserve to buy this? Does it fulfill, like, there's so much that we don't even realize that is tied to money inside of us that comes out of us. So I think the first and foremost place to start is with yourself. Begin asking yourself very tough questions. Actually begin watching your behavior. That's very eye-opening. Sometimes we don't like to sit and reflect on our own behavior. We're real quick to point a finger, especially at our spouse, of you're doing this and you're doing that and why do you do this? And I don't think that's right, because you can outwardly see what it is that they are doing, but a lot of times we don't want to be introspective. You have to be careful with that, but you don't want to look and evaluate and be self-aware and know what, and be accountable for what it is that you are doing. And that's very important.
So then step number one basically is that you need to become aware of your own behavior,
Right.
because it probably has flaws to it.
Correct.
And I think so. And I think that probably, if I could pick out one thing that might be the biggest problem with money in marriage, is how it's handled.
Correct.
And some people, they spend a lot more, and whereas other people's, they just save. And so people tend to be non-balanced. I'm way more balanced in my life at this point than I ever have been. But I've been on both ends of the spectrum.
Correct.
When I was younger, I didn't spend anything. And then as we got older, it was like, oh, yeah, do we have enough credit for this?
Yeah.
So I've been on both ends of the spectrum. But I've been able to just be honest about where I'm at. And I think that that's one of the things, is people have to realize that they don't have a perfect philosophy. Just because you think a certain way about money doesn't mean you're right.
Correct.
It means you think that way, but it doesn't mean the way that you think is 100% correct. It's probably got some aspects that are good, but some aspects that are not good or maybe out of balance. We had a guest speaker one time in church, and my friend Troy, and I remember him standing up and giving a prophetic word, and he said, I feel like the Lord's telling me that the Lord's dealing with people about money, that some of you need to be willing to spend more and give more, whereas some of you need to pull back because you're being too frivolous with your money. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking that he gave one word that spoke to two different ends of that spectrum. And there's a lot of people that they need to find the middle road. Like, they just spend. And then you have other people to where they're not willing to buy anything. Like, I can think of situations where I can think of somebody, I would never mention their name, but like the one person was like, they were so budget conscious, which is important. We're going to talk about that actually on our next episode about budgeting and things, just throw out some practical stuff. But in this case, they were so budget conscious, and their spouse needed a new pair of jeans. And literally they had like one pair of jeans, and they had money. It wasn't a problem, like they didn't have enough money. And basically they said, well, you're going to have to patch the jeans that you have. And they had all kinds of money in the bank. And it's like, there comes this place where it's like, if you love your spouse, you can take $40 out of savings, and you shouldn't take $40 out of savings every week probably to buy new jeans. Right. But if they need a new pair of jeans, go buy them a new pair of jeans, right? So there's this middle ground that we have to be able to get to. And so you're saying step number one is be able to examine your own self, watch your own behavior, and therefore you can see your philosophy. What else could you say to that?
Yes, to educate yourself. Begin, and not only, so part of educating yourself is asking yourself, what do I really want in life?
That's a good question.
And so what do I want by the end of my life? And then really digging that out, because oftentimes the now won't get us to the satisfaction of now isn't going to get us to where we really want to be. And so knowing where we want to do, and then find those people that you're like, I feel like they're doing something right. I'm seeing fruit. Go after people's fruit.
Yeah. So what fruit do you want?
What fruit do you want? And then I'm careful about, don't get yourself in comparison and then get yourself in this place where you're like, I'll never be able to. But just learn learn and have questions for them. You never know who you're going to come in contact with. I can remember in our minds where this switched a lot, where there, for me particularly, I was fearful of being around wealthy people because I felt like I wasn't at a place where I should be, and I didn't meet up to their standards, and then you feel condemned within yourself, and I wouldn't be able to pull from them. And then I was thinking, oh my gosh, most wealthy people are very well rounded and they want to give their wisdom away.
Right.
And so what questions could I have available? Do I have available that I would ask them? What do you do? How do you think about money? Where do you purpose your money?
So
just being asking those questions.
So I think that this is so what I'm just listening to you. I'm just thinking what people need to do is look outside of themselves. So then it's almost like they need to look inward and first, be like, okay, how do I view money? But then they need to go and look outside and see what kind of fruit do they want. And you're not going to get anywhere in life unless you learn from people that have gone on before you. That's just the way that life works. And the people that have this mentality of like they've got it all figured out, that's just pride. That's nonsense. And the people that we have listened to, and by no means are we, even wealthy people yet. We have a long ways to go, but we have a good handle on things. And it's not because, and honestly, so we're going to get into this the next podcast. We're about out of time now, but we're going to get this next podcast. The reason why we've increased is because we've learned how to handle what we have. It's not about always getting more, but it's just about learning to handle what you have properly.
Yeah.
But anyway, so being able to look at other people and see where they're at, looking at their fruit and saying, I want that. And what kind of goals do they have, and what kind of goals do you want to have?
Right.
And so I think that's another thing that I'd just like to say is that people need to develop goals. They need to have a why behind it, and then they need to develop goals. So if it's an issue of having more money or managing money well, or whatever it is, starting a business, different things that involve with money, you need to say why. And if your why is substantial, and you can agree on it with your spouse, then you can start to move forward together.
Correct.
So that's the place that I would start when it comes with your spouse is like, what are we after here with money? And if you have one that says, let's save every dime we can, and then the other one says, no, YOLO, bro, you only live once, right? Let's go, enjoy it up. So then you've got two opposing views. And so then if you really love each other, then you say, well, how can we find a way to meet in the middle? What's the right perspective about money and about those kind of things? And then you start to go, you have to open your heart. And if you can't come to agreement, open your heart up and say, let's go and dig out some understanding from other people that will give us a proper perspective on how we are supposed to do this. You can go and listen to Dave Ramsey. You could go and listen to Billy Applehart, a couple people that we've drawn some things from that have really, really helped us. There's a truckloads of information out there that can help you, but you have to come to a place to where you get yoked up right about this, so you stop pulling against each other.
That's right.
I would rather have two people that are together in one ditch or the other than to have one in one ditch and one in the other ditch.
Correct.
You need to be able to plow through life together and have a similar philosophy, because then you can go somewhere. You can do something.
That's right.
Because even if you had two people that spent a lot and they did it together, they could probably go, whoa, we're spending way too much money, and can pull the reins back together, right? So
yeah. And I was going to say it's what was it? It's so important that one spouse, it can't be enough that one is saying I'll lead in this area and the other one's saying I'll follow, because that's still uneven of yoke.
Right.
And I know we were even kind of at that place. It's like, whatever, you're doing a good job, and we're pretty much on the same page, but it's like we weren't going at it together. So you don't have the momentum that you can have when you're doing something together fully. Yeah. And so I would just say, two husbands, two wives, that it's so important that not just one person is spearheading the endeavor, the philosophy, the what, and that you're just like It's fine. It'll be fine. I can remain naive. They're telling me this is my budget. I'm sticking in here and it's working.
Yeah.
That's not enough. You can't go further if you're not on the same page. And then I would say I have a couple other things I would add to what do you do. So know yourself, educate, get more understanding, find the people to get fruit from, but then begin to start seeking to understand where your spouse is at and drawing questions and things out of them.
And why do you think that way?
Yes.
Not in a condemning way.
Not in a condemning, like because that puts value into them, and that draws you closer. When people feel valued, when people know that you are seeking to understand them, it will actually pull them closer to you and not push them away. And then when you're seeking to understand, you have a different posture. You're not pointing a finger. You're inviting a conversation in, and that will change. That changes a lot of things. And once you now understand things, and then hopefully it's reciprocated and they're beginning to understand you, that's then where a common thing can come together.
That's good.
You're unified and you can begin to build together, because you do need a track to run on. And you have to have the track that you know that you're going to run on, and then you can begin to go successfully together, unified, and there's a commanded blessing on unity.
That's right. And the thing is that, you said something so important there about finding out what's going on inside the other person, like why they believe what they believe. Mm-hmm. People have built inner vows around a lot of things, and especially money, because there are lots of cases of women that saw like their mom have to depend on a man, for example. And there are lots of women that grew up and said within themselves, I will never depend on a man. And so they're educating themselves, the way they handle money, the way they spend and don't spend money, the things that they buy, what they do in their life, all goes back to that inner vow.
That's right.
And then you have other people. And when people grow up in extremes, they tend to go to extreme to the other end. So then you have people that live in homes where the parents never had any fun because they didn't want to spend the money on it. I mean, they were so tight they squeaked when they walked.
Right.
And so then you have kids that grow up and they're like, you know what? When I grow up, I'm going on vacations. When I grow up, I'm actually buy the car that I want to buy. When I grow up, I'm going to live in a house that's nicer than this one. And so they sometimes can end up living beyond their means and getting into another ditch, and maybe they went and they made a ton of money and they can afford to do those things, whatever the situation is. But the point is that people end up making inner vows that determine their life, and they don't even know why they're so insistent on saving every single dime. They don't know why they do that. They just do it, and they believe that that is the absolute right way to live. And because of that, they probably miss out on investments. They probably miss out on some fun that they should have. So people get so hardcore one way, and they believe that they are 100% right. We have to lower our guard down. We have to realize that we probably made some inner vows around money that have made us do the things that we're doing. We need to go in and even literally break those inner vows and say, I'm not going to be tied to that. But Lord, what are you saying now? And then begin to move in the right direction.
And let me just say one little quick piece about an inner vow. An inner vow is something that you said to yourself to cause you to not have to endure any pain.
That's right.
Ever again. And so what that inner vow does is it becomes a driving force inside of you that causes you to go one direction to avoid that particular pain at all costs.
Yeah.
And so it's very important that you identify those things. Those things are going to come up. If you're going to start self-evaluating and asking yourself hard questions and being honest with yourself, be sure to know that these inner vows are going to
most people have made
are
inner
going
vows.
To pop up.
Yes.
And then just surrender them to the Lord and watch how
because inner vows are dangerous.
They drive you.
They come from a place of pain.
Yes.
And they're made to avoid furtherance of that pain.
That's right.
So then people end up doing stuff, and it's all tied to like that. it's not just it's an inner vow, but it becomes part of their core belief system,
right.
and they don't do anything to violate that. But it's not based out of wisdom; it's based out of fear.
That's right.
Yeah.
And anything based out of fear is never good. And
it's not a way to lead your life.
Right. You can't. If you're leading from fear, you're leading from the wrong place.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, we're out of time. We're over time. So the next podcast, we're going to get into talking about some things, really practical things about managing money. So it's going to be a super blessing.
Thank you for listening in on this conversation. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. Share with your friends and on your socials. For more information about Ward Ministries, check out wardmen.org. If this podcast is encouraging you on your marriage and family, we want to hear about it. Email us at info@wardmen.org, and make sure you keep your eye out weekly for the latest podcast on marriage and family.